Welcome to Brainish English Stories.
Natalie Hauteville was a young woman of 22 years old. She had been a widow for 3 years. Many people thought she was very pretty. Her eyes were big and dark, and they sparkled with brightness. She had the energy of an Italian and the deep feelings of a Spaniard. She was born and raised in Paris. Natalie didn't like being alone, so she invited her old uncle, M. Blaincourt, to live with her. Her uncle was an old man who never cared about anyone but himself. He was lazy and selfish. But he agreed to live with Natalie because he hoped she would take care of him and make him comfortable. When Natalie went out to meet her friends, her uncle sometimes told her that she wouldn't enjoy herself and suggested staying home. Natalie trusted her uncle's words and stayed home. Her uncle also complained about the food, saying there was too much salt. So they got a new cook. The garden needed fixing again. Some trees outside the uncle's window had to be cut because they made the house damp and might make Natalie sick. They also thought about changing their carriage. Natalie liked getting attention from men. She smiled and listened when they praised her. But she always asked her uncle's opinion before she considered anyone seriously. If Natalie really liked someone, she might act differently, but so far she liked her freedom. Natalie's uncle liked being in charge of the house. He always found something wrong with anyone who wanted to marry Natalie. He also loved playing backgammon, but it was hard to find someone to play with. Most people preferred cards. Natalie tried to learn backgammon to please her uncle, but it was too hard for her. Her uncle got mad, but Natalie gave up trying. He said he wanted you to learn for fun, said her uncle. One evening at a fancy party, Natalie met Captain Armand d'Apremont, who served in the Navy. Natalie thought a Navy captain would look rugged, with a wooden leg and an eye patch. But she was surprised to see a tall, handsome man with both legs and both eyes intact. Armand had joined the Navy early and had become a captain while still young. He had a lot of money and property, but he had never been in love before. When Armand saw Natalie, he changed his mind about love. He couldn't take his eyes off her. Soon, everyone was talking about Armand's interest in Natalie, and Natalie told her uncle she expected Armand to visit. Her uncle didn't like it. He heard Armand wasn't polite and didn't care about him. He warned Natalie to be careful. Natalie said sorry and offered not to have Armand over, but her uncle didn't insist. He just didn't want Armand to visit too often. But sometimes even the strongest decisions can change with the smallest thing. In this case, a game of backgammon played a big role in Natalie becoming Mrs. d'Apremont. The captain was really good at backgammon. When her uncle found out, he suggested they play together. The captain agreed because he knew it would make her uncle like him more. Natalie didn't like it. She wanted the captain to pay attention to her, not just play games with her uncle. After everyone left, she told her uncle, "You were right, uncle. I don't like the captain's manners. I shouldn't have invited him." But her uncle thought differently. He thought the captain was well-behaved and invited him to play backgammon often, as a way for him to court Natalie. Natalie saw her uncle liked the captain, so she forgave him for not paying as much attention to her. The captain kept visiting, playing backgammon with her uncle, and winning his favor. The captain also won Natalie's heart. One day she shyly told her uncle, "The captain asked me to marry him. What should I do?" Her uncle thought for a moment. "If you say no, the captain won't visit anymore and I won't play backgammon. But if you marry him, he'll always be here, and I'll get to play my games." So he said you should marry him. Natalie loved Armand, but she didn't want to agree too quickly. She called for the captain to talk to him. If you really love me. Can you doubt it? Hush. Don't interrupt me. If you truly love me, you'll prove it. I'll do anything. I promise. No, don't promise anymore. And one more thing, never smoke. I hate the smell of tobacco, and I won't have a smoking husband. Armand sighed and agreed. Their first months of marriage went well, but sometimes Armand felt sad and worried. Over time, he became even more unhappy. What's wrong? Natalie asked one day when she saw him acting impatient. Nothing really, the captain said, looking embarrassed. Tell me, Natalie insisted, have I done something to upset you? The captain said he was happy with her, but soon he seemed even sadder. Natalie was very worried. She told her uncle, who said, Yes, my dear, I've noticed too, when we play backgammon. He seems distracted and often rubs his forehead, like something's bothering him. One day, the captain's impatience and irritability came back stronger than before. He told his wife, My dear, I need to take an evening walk. I can't stay inside after dinner. But if you mind. Oh no. I don't mind at all. He went out every day at the same time, but he always came back happy. Natalie felt very unhappy now. Maybe he loves someone else, she thought. He must see her every day. I'm so sad. But I'll wait until I have proof before I talk to him. She went to her uncle, crying. I'm so unhappy, she said. What's wrong? Her uncle asked, leaning back in his chair. Armand leaves the house every evening after dinner for 2 hours. He comes back happy, wanting to please me. Uncle, I can't stand it. If you don't help me find out where he goes, I'll ask for a separation. But, my dear niece. Please, uncle, you're kind. Help me find out. I'm sure he's seeing another woman. Her uncle didn't want them to fight. He pretended to follow Armand but came back soon, saying he lost him. Which way did he go? Natalie asked. Sometimes this way, sometimes that, but always alone. He walks for exercise, her uncle said. But Natalie didn't believe him. She asked a smart boy to follow Armand every evening. Yes, ma'am. Tomorrow you'll follow him. Watch where he goes and tell me in private. Understand? Yes, ma'am. Natalie eagerly waited for the next day and the time when her husband would leave. Finally, it came, the chase began. Natalie watched the clock. After 45 minutes, the messenger returned, dusty and tired. Well, Natalie said, tell me everything you saw. Ma'am, I followed Mr. d'Apremont to Rue Vieille Temple. He went into a small house in an alley. No one opened the door for him. Alley. No one. Terrible. I followed him in and heard him upstairs, unlocking a door. He opened it himself? Sure? Yes, ma'am. Terrible. He has a key. Go on. I peeked through the keyhole and saw him moving a trunk. A trunk? Then he undressed? Undressed himself. Then, for a few seconds, I couldn't see him. Suddenly, he appeared again, wearing a gray shirt and a cap on his head. A shirt? Why would he wear that? What's next? I left then, ma'am, and hurried to tell you, but he's still there. Okay, go to the corner and get me a taxi. Tell the driver to go to the house you saw. While the messenger got the taxi, Natalie put on her hat and coat and went to her uncle's room. I found out. He loves someone else. He's at her house now wearing a gray shirt. I'll go and talk to him and you won't see me again. The old man didn't have time to answer. She and the messenger were already in the taxi. They finally arrived. Here's the house. Natalie got out, pale and shaking. Should I come with you, ma'am? Asked the boy. No, I'll go alone. Is it the third floor? Yes, ma'am, the left door at the top of the stairs. It seemed like the end was near. Natalie climbed the dark, narrow stairs and reached the door. Almost fainting, she cried, "Open the door, or I'll faint." The door opened and Natalie fell into her husband's arms. He was alone in the room, wearing a gray shirt and smoking a Turkish pipe. "My wife," said Armand, surprised. "Your wife, who followed you suspecting you're up to something to find out why you act so strangely." "What, Natalie, my strange behavior?" "Look, here's why." Showing his pipe. "Before we got married, you said I couldn't smoke and I promised to listen to you. For a few months I kept my promise, but it was hard for me. I felt sad and easily annoyed. I miss my pipe, my favorite thing. One day, in the countryside, I found a small house where a farmer was smoking. I asked him for a shirt and cap to wear, so I could smoke with him secretly. I didn't want you to know because the smell of smoke on my clothes would give me away. We agreed, and I went there every afternoon to smoke without you knowing. I wore the cap to keep the smell out of my hair. That's all the mystery. Please forgive me." Natalie hugged him, saying, "I should have known better. I'm happy now, and you can smoke at home whenever you want." Natalie told her uncle, "He loves me. He was only smoking, but from now on he'll smoke at home." "I can arrange that," said de Blaincourt. "He can smoke while playing backgammon." The old man thought, "This way, I'll make sure to have my game."